All right, so you've sent us some really fascinating material on King David, and looks like we're diving into a pretty intense period in his life. You know, the time when he's on the run from King Saul. We've got your marked up copy of the text itself, along with some scholarly articles, even a few historical novels. Clearly, this is a story that continues to capture the imagination, even centuries later.
And for good reason. It's a story packed with drama, political intrigue, profound questions of faith and loyalty. It's a story that speaks to something deep within the human experience, the struggle for power, the bonds of friendship, and the search for guidance in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
Okay, so for those who might need a quick refresher, let's set the stage. We've got David, the young shepherd who's been anointed as the future king of Israel, but he's not in power yet. Saul, the current king, is becoming increasingly paranoid, convinced that David is a threat to his throne. And caught in the middle of this power struggle is Jonathan, Saul's son and David's closest friend. Talk about a recipe for tension.
It's a classic triangle in a sense. You have David, who represents the future, full of potential and divinely chosen. Then there's Saul, clinging to the present, consumed by fear and insecurity. And Jonathan, torn between his loyalty to his father and his deep bond with David. It's a dynamic that plays out on both a personal and a political level, with profound consequences for all involved.
And one of the things that really struck me in these sources is the depth of the friendship between David and Jonathan. It's described as a covenant-like friendship, which sounds incredibly intense, right?
It goes far beyond just a casual friendship. In that time and culture, a covenant was a deeply sacred pact, often involving oaths and rituals, implying a commitment that was as strong as a family tie. So when the text uses that language to describe David and Jonathan's relationship, it's signaling something extraordinary, something that transcends even blood ties.
And we see that extraordinary bond play out in some really dramatic ways. They even had this secret plan to communicate using archery, which sounds straight out of a spy novel. It's incredibly clever and highlights the level of risk Jonathan was willing to take to protect his friend. He would shoot arrows near a predetermined target. If the arrows landed close, it meant David was safe. If they landed farther away, it was a warning to flee. It's a testament to their trust in each other, their reliance on nonverbal communication in a situation where even words could be dangerous.
It makes you wonder what it would be like to live in a world where trust is that fragile, where a simple conversation could put your life at risk. And it gets even more heartbreaking when Jonathan realizes just how far gone Saul is, how determined he is to kill David.
There's this incredibly poignant scene where Jonathan, having confirmed his father's murderous intent, warns David to flee. They weep together, embrace. And it's clear that this isn't just a casual goodbye. They're facing a potential separation that could be permanent. And the weight of that hangs over them like a shroud. You can almost feel the tension, the fear, the love, all mixed together in that farewell. And it underscores just how much Jonathan is risking by siding with David. He's essentially choosing his friend over his family, his future, possibly even his own safety.
It speaks volumes about his character, his willingness to stand by what he believes in, even when it means going against everything and everyone he's known his entire life. And it raises some interesting questions for us even today. What does it mean to be a true friend? Where do we draw the line between loyalty and self-preservation? These are themes that resonate across time and cultures.
So David, now officially a fugitive, finds himself seeking refuge with the priest Ahimelech. And here's where it gets interesting. Even in this desperate situation, David still manages to find help and provisions. He's given consecrated bread, which I'm guessing wasn't just a snack, right?
Definitely not. Consecrated bread was set aside specifically for the priests, considered holy and off limits to anyone else. So the fact that Ahimelech gives it to David is a huge deal. It's a sign of trust, a recognition of David's special status, perhaps even a subtle acknowledgement that he's on a divinely ordained path, even though he's currently on the run.
And it's not just bread. He's also given something even more significant, Goliath's sword.
Now that's a detail that's packed with symbolism. Here's David fleeing for his life, and he's handed the very weapon that made him famous, the symbol of his triumph over the Philistine giant. It's almost as if the story is telling us that even in our darkest moments, we have access to the strength and resources we need to overcome any obstacle. It's a powerful image of resilience and hope.
It's like he's being equipped for the battles ahead, even though those battles might look very different from the one he fought against Goliath. And sadly, those battles are about to become very real.
Right, because this act of kindness, this attempt to help David, has devastating consequences. One of Saul's servants, Doeg the Edomite, witnesses the exchange between David and Ahimelech and reports it back to the king.
And Saul, already consumed by paranoia and suspicion, reacts in a way that is truly horrific.
He orders the execution, not just of Ahimelech, but of 85 priests. And then he goes on to massacre the entire city of Nob. It's a chilling reminder of the destructive power of unchecked rage, and how fear can drive even those in positions of authority to commit unspeakable acts.
It's a stark contrast to David's earlier actions. David had the chance to kill Saul, but he chose mercy. Saul, on the other hand, chooses violence and unleashes a wave of destruction.
It raises profound questions about leadership, about the choices we make when faced with fear and uncertainty. Do we respond with compassion and restraint, or do we allow our darker impulses to take over?
It's clear that Saul is spiraling down a dangerous path, a path that ultimately leads to his downfall, and we see that contrast even more clearly in how David responds to this horrific event.
While Saul lashes out in anger and fear, David, in this moment of extreme adversity, turns to something else entirely. He turns to prayer, to seeking guidance from a source beyond himself.
And that becomes a recurring theme throughout this period of his life. He's constantly seeking divine guidance, asking for direction, whether it's before going into battle or assessing his next move. It's almost like he's operating on a completely different frequency than Saul. It's like he understands that true leadership, isn't about power or control, but about aligning yourself with a higher purpose, about seeking wisdom beyond your own limited perspective, which is fascinating because at this point in the story, David's not even king yet.
Exactly. He's still a fugitive, constantly on the move, evading Saul's forces. But even in those precarious circumstances, he's starting to attract a following, a band of loyal supporters who are drawn to his courage, his piety, and perhaps most importantly, his leadership qualities.
Yeah, the sources describe this group as a pretty diverse bunch. People who are in debt, those who are discontented with Saul's rule, even some highly skilled warriors. It's like he's becoming a magnet for anyone who feels like they don't fit in with the status quo.
It speaks to a certain charisma, a magnetism that David seems to possess. He's able to unite these disparate individuals, forge them into a cohesive group, all bound by their belief in him and his vision for the future. And you can see how those leadership skills, that ability to inspire and unite, are already taking shape, even before he formally assumes the throne.
And those skills are put to the test time and time again, as David and his men find themselves in some pretty dangerous situations, like that story where they're hiding out in a cave. And Saul himself walks right in, completely unaware that his enemy is just a few feet away. Talk about a tense moment.
The imagery is incredibly vivid. You can almost feel the stillness in the air, the hushed whispers of David's men urging him to strike, to end the pursuit once and for all. They see it as a gift from God, a chance to eliminate the threat, to seize the moment and reshape their destiny.
But David refuses. He can't bring himself to harm the Lord's anointed, even though Saul is actively trying to kill him. It would have been so easy to justify revenge in that moment, to convince himself that it was for the greater good. But he doesn't.
It's a decision that reveals the depth of David's character, his unwavering commitment to his principles. He understands that even in the face of extreme provocation, even when his own life is at stake, there are certain lines he won't cross. And that restraint, that willingness to put his faith above his personal safety, is what truly sets him apart.
He does, however, cut off a piece of Saul's robe. It's a small act, almost symbolic, but it's enough to let Saul know that he was within David's grasp and that his life was spared.
And the impact on Saul is profound. When he realizes what David has done, he's overcome with remorse. He acknowledges David's mercy, even calls him my son, a flicker of the affection he once felt resurfacing for a brief moment. It's a glimpse into a different Saul, a Saul who might have been, had he not succumbed to jealousy and fear.
It's like for a split second, there's a chance for reconciliation, a chance for them to break free from this cycle of violence and suspicion. But it doesn't last.
The pull of his darker impulses is too strong. Saul's paranoia returns, and the pursuit of David resumes. It's a tragic reminder that sometimes, even when we recognize our own flaws, even when we glimpse a better path, we're not always able to break free from our destructive patterns.
So we're left with this stark contrast. David, the rising leader, continually seeking divine guidance, choosing mercy and restraint, even when faced with extreme provocation. And Saul, the declining king, consumed by fear and suspicion, spiraling further into darkness, making decisions that ultimately lead to his own destruction.
And as the story progresses, that contrast becomes even more pronounced. Saul, in his desperation, turns to increasingly questionable methods. He consults a medium, seeking guidance from the spirit world, which was strictly forbidden under Israelite law. It's a sign of just how far he strayed from his faith, how lost he's become in his pursuit of power and control.
It's a desperate move. and it shows just how far he's willing to go to maintain his grip on the throne. But it also backfires spectacularly. Not only does he receive a chilling prophecy about his impending doom, but he also further alienates himself from God and the people he's supposed to be leading.
And in direct contrast, we see David continuing to operate with integrity. Even in the face of immense pressure, he has another opportunity to kill Saul, but again chooses to spare his life. It takes incredible strength of character to show that kind of mercy to someone who's relentlessly trying to destroy you. But David understands that vengeance isn't his to claim, that there's a higher power at work, and he's not going to interfere with that divine justice.
He's essentially demonstrating what true leadership looks like, not through brute force or manipulation, but through courage, integrity, and a willingness to submit to something greater than himself. And it's those qualities that ultimately earn him the respect and loyalty of the people, paving the way for his eventual rise to power.
It's a powerful reminder that true leadership often emerges in the most unexpected places, not from positions of authority, but from individuals who embody the values of humility, compassion, and unwavering faith.
And it sets the stage for a pivotal moment in the story. A major battle with the Philistines, a battle that will determine the fate of Israel and forever alter the course of David's life. So we're on the brink of this epic battle with the Philistines. The sources describe it as like a clash of titans, a moment of reckoning for the Israelites. And it's against this backdrop of war and uncertainty that Saul's internal turmoil reaches its tragic climax.
We've seen how Saul has been spiraling downward, consumed by fear, jealousy, and despair. He's turned away from God, consulted a medium, and made choices that have alienated him from his people.
Wow.
Now facing the possibility of defeat, his internal struggles boil over, leading him to a devastating act.
The sources describe how Saul, wounded and realizing the battle is lost, takes his own life on the battlefield. It's a shocking end for a king who once held so much promise, a stark reminder that power and authority don't shield us from the consequences of our choices.
His death is both a personal tragedy and a pivotal moment in Israel's history. It marks the end of an era, the passing of the old order, and it creates a vacuum, a void that needs to be filled.
And it's into this void that David steps forward, not as a conqueror seizing power, but as a leader chosen by God and gradually accepted by the people. But as you might expect, the transition isn't exactly smooth. It's not like everyone just automatically falls in line and says, okay, David, you're in charge now.
Right. There's a period of uncertainty, of political maneuvering, even internal conflict. David is initially anointed king of Judah, his own tribe, while Saul's son Ishbosheth is proclaimed king over the remaining tribes, a fractured kingdom, divided by loyalties and competing claims to power.
It would have been so easy for David to get caught up in the power struggle, to seek revenge for all that Saul had put him through, but he doesn't. Instead, he demonstrates the same qualities that have marked his journey so far: patience, humility, and a deep trust in God's timing.
He consolidates his power in Judah, proving himself to be a wise and just ruler. He doesn't rush to war with Ishbosheth. He waits. He builds alliances. He strengthens his position, and through a series of events that showcase both his political savvy and his military skill, he eventually unites all the tribes of Israel under his leadership.
It's a remarkable achievement. This shepherd boy, who was once on the run, hunted by a jealous king, is now the undisputed king of a unified Israel. It's a testament to the power of character, of integrity, of faith, even in the face of extraordinary challenges.
And his reign, as you know, becomes a defining era in Israel's history. He establishes Jerusalem as the capital, expands the kingdom's borders, and lays the groundwork for a golden age. But even as he achieves these incredible feats, the sources never shy away from the complexities of his character. He makes mistakes, faces internal conflicts, and experiences personal tragedies.
Which I think makes his story even more compelling, more relatable. He's not just a flawless hero, but a human being wrestling with the challenges of leadership, the temptations of power, the weight of responsibility. He's a flawed hero, which in a way makes him even more heroic.
Exactly. And it's that blend of human vulnerability and extraordinary accomplishment that continues to resonate with people across centuries. His story offers profound insights into the nature of leadership, the complexities of faith, and the enduring struggle between our better and worse impulses.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of David, what are some of the key takeaways, some of the lasting impressions that we can carry with us?
For me, it's the reminder that true leadership isn't about dominance or control. It's about service, about integrity, about a willingness to submit to something greater than yourself. It's about choosing compassion over revenge, even when it's difficult. And it's about recognizing that even in the darkest moments, even when surrounded by chaos and uncertainty, There's always hope, always the possibility for redemption, for growth, for the triumph of good over evil.
It's a powerful message, and one that feels particularly relevant today in a world that often seems obsessed with power and driven by fear. David's journey reminds us that there's another way, a path of courage, faith, and integrity, a path that might not be easy, but ultimately leads to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Thanks for joining us on this incredible exploration of one of history's most fascinating figures. We hope you found it as insightful and engaging as